All right, everybody. In this video, we're going to be talking about the elasticity of supply. The price elasticity of supply is how much the quantity supplied of a good responds to a change in the price of that good. So we all know when the price of something goes up, suppliers of that good will want to increase the supply to the market because it's become more profitable to do so. So for example, if you're a home builder, and the price of housing is increasing in your community, you have a greater incentive to build more homes that year. And in fact, that's what happens. Prices of homes go up and home builders will increase their building and try to build more to take advantage of this new price increase. All right, so anyways, so when we talked about the elasticity of demand, right? Well, we always got a negative number because, right? Because, well, why, right? But demand curves slope downwards, right? So as the price of something goes up, what happens to the quantity? The quantity demanded goes down. So we always get a negative number when we're calculating our price elasticities of demand. However, that is not true, of course, right? With the supply curve, right? As the price of something increases, the supply of something the quantity supplied to the market increases as well. So therefore, we always get a positive number, okay? Now, the formula is exactly the same. In fact, you wouldn't know any difference at all except for its price elasticity of supply, right? So we're talking about the quantity supplied to the market instead of the quantity demanded to the market like we do in the price elasticity of demand. Anyways, pretty easy. So easy, in fact, I think we can do a working example right now. For example, suppose that an increase in the price of milk from $2.85 to $3.15 per 4-liter container raises the amount that dairy farmers produce from 9,000 to 11,000 liters per month. Okay, so using the midpoint method, the formula below, calculate the price elasticity of supply. Please pause the video. All right, so price elasticity of supply, right, equals 11,000 minus 9,000 divided by 10,000. Take the average. And our price is increased to $3.15. And it was $2.85. And of course, the average is 3. What do we get? Well, we get 0.2 divided by 0.1. It's a positive number. And we do the math, and that becomes 2. So the question becomes, is the price elasticity of supply elastic, or is it inelastic? And, well, we know that it is elastic, right? Just because the same rules apply, the exact same rules apply as they do with the price elasticity of demand. Any number greater than 1 is going to be elastic. And any number less than 1 is going to be inelastic. That it's going to be less sensitive to price changes. The supply is going to be less sensitive to price changes. All right, so here we can see with this example, that it is elastic, right? The price elasticity of supply of milk is elastic. It's more sensitive to price changes. The quantity supplied is more sensitive to price changes. And matter of fact, we can say, because it's a simple number here, 2, we can basically conclude that the elasticity of 2 reflects the fact that the quantity supplied moves proportionally twice as much as the price. Right? So that's quite interesting. All right, guys. So which factors make the quantity supplied to the market more sensitive to price changes or less sensitive to price changes? What are the key determinants of price elasticity of supply? Well, the first one I'll talk about is ease of entry into the market. How easy is it for new suppliers to enter the market? Sometimes there are barriers to entry. Maybe it's a patent, for example. There are legal reasons why other companies can't join and start supplying to the market. But there are also other factors, just the fact it's capital intensive and it takes a long time to build a project, like a mining project or an oil project or something like that. Or if you want to start to build a factory, right? I mean, that takes a lot of money and that takes a lot of time. So barriers to entry is a significant factor in the ability of suppliers to respond to price increases. Okay, so if, for example, there are a lot of barriers to entry, that's going to mean that the price elasticity of supply is going to be less elastic, right? It's going to be inelastic. Spare capacity, absolutely. If you got spare capacity in your factory, right, then it's easy to respond to price changes. Yeah, it's very inexpensive, right? You've got spare capacity in your factory. It's easy. But as time, as the amount of the price goes up and up and up and up, and you start supplying more and more and more to the market, eventually you're going to hit full capacity. And it's going to be more difficult to respond to price changes. Maybe you need to, right, expand your factory or open up a new factory. Ease of storage, absolutely. If you can store your product, like for example, gold miners, right? When the price of gold is very, very low, they tend to, they mine gold and they keep their gold, right? They don't sell their gold to the market. They wait for prices to be higher, right? Which they often do because they can store their gold very, very easily. And so when the price does go up, then they can quickly respond to those price increases. The length of the production unit period, right? So for example, building a house takes 1 month, 2 months, 3 months to build a house. But what about burritos? Let's say the demand for burritos goes way up. Well, it's very easy to respond to this new demand of burritos, because, how long does it take to make a burrito? Like 1 minute. And it's easy to start expanding production. Just hire another worker, or, and things like that. So the length of production unit period really matters as well. Producing a house takes a lot more time. So you're less likely to respond to price changes, at least in the short run. We'll be talking about the long run in a minute. But also the ease of switching production. Is it easy to switch production of one good to another good? Maybe your company produces multiple goods, and the price of one good goes way up. Well, how easy is it for you to move your factors of production and to start producing that higher priced good and start adding more quantity to the market? Okay. The other thing, and which this graph here is illustrating on the right, is the time period under consideration. Obviously, the more time you have, the more elastic the supply becomes, the more you are able to respond to price changes. If the price of homes goes way up this month, a home builder is less likely to be able to respond to the market right away. But in the next couple of months, absolutely, right? Now you can start responding. You can hire more people, get more equipment, buy more lots where you can build your house on. And then what about the next summer, the next season? Yes, absolutely. Home builders are even more able to respond to those price increases. All right, so they're pretty much the exact same as the elasticity of supply. Here we have an A, we have perfectly inelastic supply. It doesn't matter what the price is at all. An increase in the price does not affect the quantity supplied of that product. Now, I cannot think of anything like that, okay? There has always been, like when there's an increase in price, there's always been a reaction and there's been an increase in the supply. Even gold. Now, gold is known to really hold its value because it's so hard to find. So yeah, an increase in the price and the price of gold goes up, then yeah, it's hard to find and it's hard to react. So it is very inelastic. Absolutely. Maybe if I were to draw something, maybe that's even too elastic for the gold market. Maybe it's just something very, very, very slightly like this, okay? But you got to admit that if the price of gold doubled or tripled or quadrupled, or maybe the price of gold currently at the time of this video is about 1,850. What if it was all of a sudden shot up to $10,000. Well, if it did, then a lot more companies would get into gold mining. It just becomes so much more profitable, and therefore there would be an increase in the supply of gold, okay? Ever so slightly. And again, I mean, the reason why I use this example of gold, because it's very close to price less, perfectly inelastic supply. Now there is one more product, right, that is programmatic, okay, in its design, and that is Bitcoin. And the whole sort of value proposition of Bitcoin is that the supply is completely controlled. So right now, the supply is increasing, but it's not increasing in response to changes in price at all, because it's managed within Bitcoin's source code. So it is true that right now, the Bitcoin price, the Bitcoin supply is going up, excuse me, but it's not responsive to price changes, because it's in its programming. The price goes up, the price could double. It's not really going to change the additional supply of Bitcoin that comes to the market. In fact, right now there are 18.5 million Bitcoins that have already been produced, but there's a maximum amount of 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be produced. And so that's 2.5, if we do the math, 2.5 more million Bitcoins that will be produced, but they will be produced from now into the year 2140. So in the year 2140, we will be able to say, because no Bitcoins can possibly ever be produced after that year, that only Bitcoin, I believe, I can't think of anything else, that only Bitcoin will have perfectly inelastic supply. And of course, this is what gives Bitcoin its value proposition. All right, anyways, and we can also see when we're talking about elasticity that the steeper the curve, just like with the demand curve, the steeper the curve, the more inelastic the curve is. So this is a pretty steep curve, a supply curve here in B, and we can see that it's inelastic. Then we have unit elastic, and of course a flatter supply curve means a more elastic supply curve, okay? And here in the last graph, perfectly elastic supply, right? So, I get kind of hypothetical. I can't really think of an example. At any price above $4, the quantity supplied would be infinite. All right, at exactly $4, producers will supply any quantity, right? I don't get it. Anyway, so that's just a hypothetical situation. Perfectly elastic supply. It's the elasticity equals infinity. I can't think of a real world example for that. All right, so how the price elasticity of supply can vary. Just like the price elasticity of demand varies along the demand curve, even if the demand curve is linear, like we talked about in the last video, the supply also varies depending on where you are on the supply curve. So we're talking about from $3 to $4, the price increases. In that case, the supply is very responsive to that price change. And we can see that the supply curve is very flat here. And so, yeah, and so this is quite typical, right? It's a typical case, because I guess perhaps at this low levels, we can imagine that factories will have spare capacity. Right? So for low levels of the quantity supplied, the elasticity of supply is high, and firms have spare capacity. So when the price goes up, it's very easy to increase the quantity supplied to the market. Small increases in the price make it profitable for firms to begin using that spare capacity that they have. But as the quantity of supply rises, the supply curve is becoming more steep. Again, it really doesn't have to become more steep. It still changes. And here what we see is that the elasticity is very small. It's very inelastic. It's very steep. And why would that be? Because firms begin to reach full capacity, right? And I mean, so that they might be, hiring more people, have two people working a piece of equipment rather than one. It becomes less efficient. right? Because you have more hours of labor going in there, but maybe you can produce that little bit more, people working overtime, things like that. Because full capacity is all, we're already using our full capacity, and increasing further production further requires even the construction of new plants, and that takes time. That takes a lot of time. So to induce firms to incur this extra expense of producing new plants, increasing the size of their factories, the price must rise substantially. Okay, so in this case, supply becomes much less elastic. All right, so let's do a working example. Okay, the supply curve of beachfront property is inelastic, right? Beachfront property is rare, right? It's more scarce than other property. So therefore it is more inelastic, or less elastic, excuse me. So the supply of new cars, we're going to say in this case, is elastic. Okay, so anyway, suppose population growth causes demand for both goods, the demand for beachfront property and the demand for new cars, to double. Okay, so at each price, the quantity demanded doubles. Okay, so let's examine this more carefully. For which product will the price change the most? For which products will the quantity change the most? Okay, so let's examine this further. So here we have beachfront property. Now our demand curves are exactly the same. Okay? And all we're going to have is we're going to show, for beachfront property, we're going to show it to be an inelastic demand curve. So let's go ahead. That's pretty inelastic. It's pretty steep. And so let's see what happens then. Right? Okay, kind of, maybe I should move this over here a little bit. Anyway, so I'm not a perfect illustrator by any means, but we see we have a price increase that's rather large, right? And we have, a price increase that's rather large, and we have a quantity supplied to the market that is smaller. Okay, now what happens if we have a flat supply curve? And yeah, exactly. What are we going to see? What's the difference here, right? Now, it's very elastic, right? So we have even small changes in price, right, can lead to a large impact on the quantity that is supplied to the market.